with over 8 billion fossils. The Morrison Formation in western North America is one of the richest deposits of prehistoric remains in the world, but it's a tough act to follow. So much so that even though paleontologists have been excavating here for decades, new finds continue to come from this site, and these new discoveries are rewriting our understanding of some of history's greatest beasts. Keep watching to find out how. Today we're talking about the Morrison Formation and a new study on sauropods in the area that turns everything we know about these long-necked dinosaurs upside down. The Morrison Formation gets its name from the town of Morrison, Colorado, where many of the fossils were first discovered back in the late 1800s. But the rocks themselves stretch from Canada down through the United States and into Mexico. The formation consists of rock that was laid down during the late Jurassic period between about 156 and 145 million years ago. During this time, the area was a vast swamp forest ecosystem, with meandering rivers depositing sediment that eventually became stone. As the sea level rose and fell and the climate fluctuated, these sediments built up layer upon layer until today. This created an extensive fossil record of animals and plants that lived during the Jurassic. For example, in the 1940s, paleontologist Earl Douglas found the first of several massive dinosaur skeletons that would come to be known as the Dinosaur Channel. It since yielded at least 15 sauropods, 12 of which are A notable member of this group is the aptly named, say that 5 times fast. At 13 meters long and weighing around 7,000 kilograms, this was a true behemoth. But these are just 2 examples among many. The Morrison has also produced fossils of more than 50 other species of vertebrates, including the terrifying Allosaurus, our old friend Stegosaurus, and even mammals from the Jurassic epoch. And because the Morrison is so extensive, we can track the evolution of species over time. For instance, we found fossils of Maiasaura, a relative of Ankylosaurus, in the lower layers of the formation dating back to the early Jurassic. But then there's Camptosaurus, a herbivorous ornithopod that appears in the middle of the Morrison and continues to get bigger as we go higher in the formation. By the latest Jurassic, Camptosaurus had grown to nearly 9 meters long. That's longer than a Tyrannosaurus rex. But while the Morrison Formation has taught us a lot about prehistoric life, one thing has always puzzled scientists. Even though the formation spans a time period of around 11 million years, the vast majority of fossils come from only a few million years in the middle. Why are there so few fossils from either end? It took decades for researchers to realize what was going on. You see, the Morrison Formation is actually a series of smaller formations that are all deposited at different times. These are called perisequences, and they represent periods of high sea level, when vast swampy forests covered the entire area. When the sea levels dropped, erosion stripped away whole sections of older rock, exposing new layers underneath. Then the next pulse of sediment would come along and bury those newly exposed rocks. So when we go to the Morrison to dig up fossils, we're actually digging up a bunch of different slices of Jurassic time all mixed together. But now researchers have a better understanding of these slices and how they fit together, and that's led to some major discoveries. Take the sauropods, for instance. Sauropods were the classic long-necked plant-eating dinosaurs made famous by the likes of Prehistoric and They were also some of the largest animals to ever live. But not all sauropods were giants. Take the genus Mark Mitchell, a horned dinosaur at the Royal Tyrrell Museum of Paleontology in Canada, named this animal after a character from Avatar: The Way of Water. But the name comes from the Lakota word meaning gray or dusky and pelta meaning shield, in reference to the many shields or scutes on its body. What makes Eemantipelta special is that it's one of the smallest sauropods ever found, reaching lengths of less than 9 meters and weighing less than 3,000 kilograms. The discovery of this small sauropod wasn't really a surprise. After all, the idea that sauropods started out small and grew huge is hardly revolutionary. What was surprising was where it came from. The new study published in the journal PNA has used the fossil record of sauropods from the Morrison to reconstruct their evolution using a technique called parsimony, which basically involves drawing inferences based on the most likely scenario. They tried to work backward to figure out what the ancestral sauropod must have looked like. They based their reconstruction on 6 shared characteristics of sauropods, things like a long neck and whip-like tail, a small head with a narrow snout, and a set of closely spaced vertebrae in the middle of the neck. Based on the distribution of these traits across the various sauropod fossils, they estimated that this ancestral sauropod would have been about 6 meters long. But then they compared that reconstruction with the fossils they found at the Morrison, and they were surprised by what they saw. All the small sauropods they found belonged to a single branch of the sauropod family tree. This means that this group evolved from a small ancestral population and radiated into larger forms as the Jurassic went on. But that's not all. The researchers noticed that none of the small sauropods came from the oldest rocks in the formation. Instead, all of them came from the same couple of million years in the middle. That means that despite the fact that sauropods were already on their way to becoming giants, they were still pretty small when the ecosystem represented by the Morrison first formed. It turns out that the sauropods living in the earliest part of the Morrison were actually all large animals. These would include the Dinosaurs, which reached lengths of 18 meters. There are no small sauropod fossils from that time period. That suggests that there might have been something going on in the environment that prevented small sauropods from evolving into giant ones. Perhaps there was too much competition with other large herbivores. Maybe the climate was too dry, or there just weren't enough plants to eat. Whatever the reason, it seems like sauropod evolution ground to a halt in the earliest part of the Morrison. Then something changed. Maybe the climate shifted and became more hospitable to smaller animals. Or maybe the large predators that lived at the beginning of the formation died out and smaller dinosaurs could finally diversify. But whatever happened, the stage was set for the sauropod radiation that we see in the fossil record. And there's even more. The team used the same parsimony approach to look at the evolution of the ornithopods in the Morrison, a diverse group of mostly plant-eating dinosaurs that includes Camptosaurus. They came to the same conclusion, that the small ancestors of Morrison ornithopods were already large by the time the formation began. This may suggest that whatever environmental factors were stunting sauropod growth in the earliest Morrison were having an effect on other dinosaurs as well. So what does this all mean? Well, for one, it means that instead of being relics of a more ancient past, many of the Morrison's iconic dinosaurs were actually evolving right alongside other animals in the formation. Take the Stegosaurus, for example. We know that it appeared in North America around 156 million years ago, but we didn't know if it evolved in North America or if it migrated from somewhere else. If small sauropods were evolving into giants in the Morrison, then it's likely that the Stegosaurs were doing the same. And it's not just dinosaurs. There's evidence that this pattern of small ancestors becoming big descendants happened with other groups, too, like the mammal relatives that lived during the Jurassic. Now, the authors don't think that this was a universal trend in the Morrison. After all, not every ancestral population they looked at fit the small to large pattern, but it does seem to have been a common one. This has big implications for how we understand ecosystems in the late Jurassic and beyond. It turns out that the classic image of dinosaurs as gigantic monsters that dominated the landscape is only part of the story. Some of the most famous dinosaurs were still pretty little guys. Thanks for coming along on this journey through time, and thanks again to my supporters for making it possible for all of us to dig into the past. If you liked this episode, you can leave a like and a comment down below. And if you want to see more, don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.